Welcome to the Truth in the Arena podcast, where we are speaking with coaches from around a variety of sports and disciplines about leadership, values, principles, and things that they are trying to instill in the athletes that they coach. Today, we are very excited to have as our guest Coach Bob Remensperger. Coach Bob is a B licensed soccer coach. He has over a decade of experience coaching across multiple clubs in the San Diego area. He was the team captain of his college team at Point Loma Nazarene University. And in addition to coaching soccer, he also balances a professional day job in project management. And currently with Legends FC San Diego Del Mar, he is our college liaison, working with players who are looking to advance into that next phase of their career from high school up into the college level. Coach Bob, thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy day to join us.
Thank you, Coach Nate. I'm looking forward to it. Appreciate you having me on.
Fantastic. So obviously, as I mentioned, you do have a professional role in your life. So coaching isn't your one job. And for those of us and many others who do have other things going on in our lives, coaching isn't just something that we do to earn a paycheck or fill time. What we're trying to do is really build values in our athletes, instill something important in them in terms of the life skills that they're going to take to the next levels of their lives. And there's an intrinsic motivation to what we do. So what are some of the bigger picture values and principles that you are looking to instill in your athletes that help motivate you to get out to the field every single day?
Yeah, thanks, Nate. So there's quite a few. I think for me, starting from the beginning, what I try to teach my players and what I try to do is lead by example is number one, always being very prepared for what we're doing in the training environment, prepared for what we're doing on match day. And I think that's a life skill that translates through sports, school, home, all of those different things. So first thing for me is being prepared, being organized, being punctual so that when you arrive at training, you're ready to go. It's something that I talk about with the parents and the players at the very beginning of the season. And what I'd like to do is, I think the word expectations is a big word. I try to give the parents and the players what my expectations are of them and what the environment will look like that they're going into. And you have to communicate those expectations so everybody's on the same page. And then my job after that is to make sure I enforce them. It's one thing to say them, it's one thing to tell people to do it. But if I'm not doing it and I'm not leading by example, it's harder for the players to understand. So I think it's organized, being prepared, being punctual, and being very professional in what you're doing. Yes, I have a professional career outside of coaching, but when I'm in the coaching environment, I want everything to look professional. I want to give the players a really good experience. So when they arrive to training, they know they're ready to go. One of the things that I do with my training sessions is I prepare a written training session before every practice. I put it on my clipboard when I get there. And when the players arrive, we have a standard on how we set ourselves up before we start practicing. And they'll go visit the clipboard as I'm setting up exercises to get themselves familiar with what we're doing. And I think it helps kind of get them thinking about what's going on and what's going to happen in the environment. And again, it goes back to being organized. It goes back to being prepared, something I do as a coach. And then I want the players to do the same thing in the soccer world and then at home and in the schoolroom.
Absolutely. And something very important you mentioned there about leading by example, and something other guests on the podcast have mentioned, that your team culture is not set by the best behaviors that you discuss. It's set by the worst behaviors that you tolerate. And so you have to be that one who's leading by example and setting those standards and making sure that you're enforcing and reinforcing those standards. And also important points you make about organization and preparation. And as you talk about those principles on the soccer field, how do some of those same elements of your coaching philosophy then inform your viewpoint on leadership, whether that's at the community level, the state level, the national level, in your professional life? And how do you demand those same principles be shown by the leaders that you look to follow?
Yeah, good question. I think for me, the leaders that I followed, the models that I followed, number one was my dad. To start with, I started playing sports because he was my coach when soccer and baseball. And one of the things that he always taught me was how important discipline was. And all these things with being prepared, being organized, being professional, that's all discipline. Those are all decisions that we make as a person, as a coach, as a dad. So I straight away try to preach discipline to the players and show them what it is by you just like you just mentioned, like leading by example. The other sort of leadership that I try to follow along with, and this is again kind of back to my dad, is a collaborative environment. I want the players to be a part of the process. I want them to understand what we're doing. It's easy for us as coaches to give them an exercise or give them specific directions on what they want to do. But unless they understand it, it doesn't quite work. So that's where collaboration comes in. I think the feedback from the players is very, very important. And I think as coaches, no matter what level we're at, we have to be willing to collaborate with the players and get their feedback on what's working and what's not working. And goes back to kind of a US soccer coaching thing is check for understanding. Make sure that the players understand what we're doing and why we're doing it. I think the why is always very, very important. And just you'll go to practices and players are out there doing awesome drills. And at the end of it, you ask them, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? And they don't know. They're just out there running around kicking a ball. That's what coach told me to do. So I think we have a job as coaches to make sure they understand the why and what we're trying to do and what we're trying to accomplish. And if they don't understand it, I want them to be comfortable enough to come and ask, hey, coach, you're asking me to do this. Why are we doing it? And I think so for me, when it comes to leaders, discipline is very important, I think, for all walks of life. And then being able to collaborate. Just because we're the coach, just because have the experience playing, coaching, licenses, all those things doesn't mean that their feedback isn't very important. They're the ones on the field. They're kicking the ball. They're running around with their teammates. It feels and looks different to them than it does to us. So yeah, back to leadership, it's being disciplined and then being able to collaborate with your group.
And then certain characteristics like discipline and preparation and organization, super, super important going through the youth sport model. And then there's another quality that players have that is also incredibly important is the willingness to take some risks and the willingness to step outside some of those roles and to be brave. And one of the things that we say nonstop as soccer coaches is, be brave, take a risk, be brave. What are some of the ways that you help instill that in your athletes? Because we understand that they operate on that protect to perform continuum, and if they're not feeling safe, then they're not quite as willing to take that risk and be brave. So we want them to feel like they're able to step outside of their comfort zone and take those next risks. And how are some of the ways that you help instill that in your players?
Yeah, that's a great question. And every player is a little bit different. Everyone's got a little bit of a different story coming into the environment. Some are naturally brave, some need to be encouraged to be brave. But before you can ask them to do that, before you can want them to kind of carry that characteristic in the game, I think the first thing you got to do is you got to believe in those kids. You really got to believe in them, and they've got to know that you believe in them. And in my training environment and your training environment, Nate, um, when the girls do good things, encouragement, positive encouragement, that was a great job. They have to know that that you believe in what they're doing. And for me, it's really quite simple. What I say to the players sometimes, um, if you give me your max effort, if you give me a good attitude, that's all I can ask from you. Like that's all I really need from you to do that. And if they give those things, then I will believe in them. And do they get it right all the time? No, they do not. Do I get it right all the time? No, I do not. But it's about believing in the players so that they're comfortable enough to take chances and try things. I also think when you're asking a player to be brave in a game, it's something that you should also ask them to do in training so that when they get to the game and they get to match day, it's not a new command. It's not a new direction you're giving them. So you've got to going kind of talking from training to match day, whether it's being brave or other things, what you teach them in practice, you can carry into the game. And it's the same thing. Like in practice, I'm super, super positive, super, super encouraging the players to take chances, encouraging the players to try different things. And then we start to build a trust. They start to believe that, hey, coach believes in me that I can do this. And then I put the girls in situations where they have to be brave, whether it's a new position, a different part of the field, a different role within the team. And their response is directly correlated with how much I believe in them. And I really, really think it's important that we build those relationships with the athletes. They need to know that you believe in them. And everybody's role on the team is a little bit different than
Right.
others. So there's a varying way that you can do it from the top of the roster to the bottom of the roster. Those girls have to know that you've got their back, that you're going to support them in what they're trying to do. And if they don't get it right, that's okay, right? But is their effort good? Is their attitude good? Are they trying to do the right things? Then okay, we can work with that. And it goes back to kind of the leadership topic that we just talked about, being able to collaborate with the players, believe in them, give them opportunities to be brave. And then if they're unable to do that, have an environment that's open enough so that you can talk about it and figure out what's the next step on how the player can achieve what the coach is asking them to do.
Fantastic. Yeah. And you talked somewhat in depth already about getting feedback from players and collaborating with the players and showing them that you believe in them. And something that I talked about in the very, very first episode of the podcast with Coach Tony Holler was his mantra of make practice the best part of a kid's day, and have them experience that joy. And youth sports are one of just the greatest places where you can teach kids to experience joy and experience that excitement. And there's also a critique of youth and travel sports that that's not what they do, is that they have the ability to kind of suck the joy and the life out of youth sports and turn them into a grind. So to kind of counter that, what are the some suggestions that you would have for either younger coaches or even peer coaches in the club sports world for how you go about creating joy and creating an atmosphere that players want to come to every single day so they experience that part of sport?
Yeah, another great question, Nate. And it's very, very important. It really is. First things first. When I get to practice, I'm ahead of the players. I get organized. I lay out everything, like I mentioned before. And then as the players arrive, I go out of my way to say hello to every single one of them. And hey, how are you? And it's usually a pretty short conversation. How was school? Depending on how many players are there. The ones that get there the earliest, you can have a little more dialogue but I go and say hello to every single one of them. I want them, number one, to feel welcomed into where they're coming. Like we talked about before, some players have different roles within the team. Some players play more or less than other players, and maybe it's our first practice since our last game. And there's a player who didn't play a lot in that game compared to a player who didn't. I don't treat them any different. It's hello, how are you doing? Get to know them on a personal level. And then when it comes to creating joy outside of that is I'm very big on wanting the girls to kind of spend some time together before we start to practice. So I ask them to do soccer things before practice, but to do them together, whether it's a juggling exercise or a small rondo or something shooting. I don't want individuals out there doing their own thing before practice. I want them to do it together. So I'll encourage the players to do that. So I think straight away from the very beginning, I'm saying hello to them. They're saying hello to me. And a lot of them, it's fun because I'll ask them, hey, how was your day? Oh, it was tough. I had a math test. It was really, really hard. And did you try your hardest? Yeah. Did you get a good grade? Probably. Okay. You did good. And what's happened is with the players that I've coached for a little bit longer, they start to ask me that question. And hey, coach, how was your day? I'm like, oh, it kind of catches me off guard. It was
Yeah.
okay, you know? Um, so it's fun that they're doing that too. And it's back to kind of our first topic with life skills, like being able to communicate with somebody. They're coming from school. I'm coming from work. We're meeting at the end of the day. We've all already had a full day. And be able to connect with them on how you're doing. I think that's the first thing you need to do when the players arrive. And then when it comes to training, like running a training session and making it fun for the girls, there's a couple things I like to do is I try to do some sort of game in every single practice, whether it's a relay race or some sort of game, something that gets them kind of going. And it's funny, even with the strongest teams and the strongest players, any sort of little game, they'll enjoy it. Like if it's just a simple relay game, they love it. And right away, smiles are on their faces. They're engaged. They're ready to go. And it's very important that we do that. I try to do something like that at the beginning of every practice. And then as a team building goes, like at the beginning of the year, I will intentionally put together exercises where the girls are going to have some success, where they're good at it. And I think the girls, they need to feel like they're doing a good job to enjoy what they're doing. If you start practices with really difficult exercises that maybe are hard on the technical side, and they don't understand it and they're struggling to do it, and you're trying to coach them through it, it's not fun. It's not fun
Right.
for them. So you start with exercises that they're good at on purpose. Like you want them to have success. You wanted them to enjoy it. So once they start to do that, whether it's like a 3-team rondo that we like to do, a bridge game, the girls are very good at it. And I've done it with them for a lot of times and for a lot of practices. When they show up and that exercise is ready to go, they're into it right away. Like, let's go, coach. And they know they're good at it. So what do? I start with them kind of believing in them, like we talked about before, and showing that they're, reinforcing the positive stuff within that exercise. And then as the year goes on, you start to build on that exercise. You make it more technical. You make it more difficult. Maybe the field gets a little smaller. Maybe you take away a goal on each side. Maybe you limit the amount of touches that they have on the ball, but you start with something that they're good at. I think it's very important for them to have success and enjoy what they're doing. That's going to make it fun. That's fun for anybody else. Like no matter what you're doing, if you're good at it, it's a lot more fun.
Mhm.
So a couple of things. One, the introduction when they arrive is very important. Put them in an environment where they can have some fun straight away with a game. Get them in exercises they're good at, and not just good at, but familiar with too.
Mhm.
Especially as a soccer coach, it's so easy to find a million different exercises through social media or wherever you want. I mean, it's all in front of you, and it's very tempting. Like, oh, I'm going to try that in practice, and you're watching a Real Madrid or a Liverpool thing, and you've got 13-year-old girls. They're not going to be able to do that. So find stuff that works for them. Enjoy the training session. And I do think it's important. The girls always want to play. Like they'll ask you all the
Mhm.
time, coach, when do we scrimmage? So
Mhm.
finding some time in practice after you've got through what you're trying to teach them just to let them play. They want to play. Will bring a lot of joy. And it's a good way to end a training session because they're leaving it. They've played the game. They understand it. And then when we leave, I try to go around and give everybody a high five again, tell them that I'm proud of them and how hard that they worked today, give them a couple points that, hey, we were really good in these areas. I think in the next practice, we're going to focus on these areas, like give them some sort of closure to the training session. So it feels like there's an entry into the practice. There's an idea of what we're doing within it. They have fun with the practice at the end with the scrimmage. And then you say goodbye and you make sure that they know that you're proud of them. And then everybody does their cheer and their stretching and you get yourself out of there. And I think they can start happy, they can leave happy, and that's so important. And it really, really is. It's going to get them coming back to practice. You want them when they're going back to mom and dad's car after practice to be in a good mood, to be happy, to get into that car and show the parents the joy that they have for the game. It makes it easier for the parents as well when they see their kid going through that. So I'm very intentional about doing that. I want the girls to enjoy what they're doing, and I think they'll be better players if they are. I mean, I think you can get to a really high level where it's super intense and super structured, but you want them to have success. You want them to
Mhm.
enjoy it. And I think that's one of the best ways to do it. And I'm very intentional in my process in doing that.
No, a bunch of very, very important points and also the intentionality behind it because they don't necessarily happen at random. But bringing in that element of play is so, so very critical. Not overcomplicating exercises is super, super critical because, again, you can think of all these different ways of creating different kinds of designs of passing patterns and games. And they've just come from school and they've had a long day already. And if you overcomplicate that, that's not super fun and they're not successful. And then the training session goes accordingly. And then one of the most important points you make is having those moments to have the conversations with the players where you're actually getting to know them and going beyond how are you today, which is either good almost
Right.
95% of the time because they don't want to say bad, but like how was school, what's how was your weekend, what did you do? And with those conversations, then you start to get a sense of what the players want and what their goals may be. And as they start to get older, you start to have players whose goals become beyond just where they are at on your team, and they start to have goals in terms of, hey, I'm looking to potentially play beyond the high school level. I'm looking to play at the college level. So in addition to being the college liaison for our soccer club, you also have a daughter who went through the full recruiting process as a club volleyball player and is currently playing D1 volleyball for Arkansas. So, with both of those feet in those two different roles as coach, liaison, and parent, what are some suggestions you have for coaches, athletes, and parents in terms of best practices for going through that recruiting process? And then maybe also a few pitfalls like try to avoid these things because that might lead you down the wrong road.
Yeah, good question. And there's a lot to kind of unpack with that question. The recruiting process there's a lot of moving parts That environment is changing all the time from when I was going through it to even my daughter, who was just a few years ago, she's going through it to where it is now. It's always changing. Technology is changing it. Resources are changing it. The amount of players that are interested in playing at the level are changing it. I do think, speaking about soccer, like club soccer and maybe club volleyball as well, especially where we live in Southern California, there's a tremendous amount of talent. There really, really is. And a lot of these players are motivated to go play in college. And I think what's important first is it's something the player wants. There's too many examples where it's mom and dad who are pushing that, and this is their return on investment. They've spent all this time and money in the club world, and they think that the payoff is their kid getting a college scholarship at the end of it all. And sometimes that happens, sometimes it doesn't. And it's a tricky balance as a parent. You put a lot of time and money into it, especially if you have an athlete who can play in college. It's not cheap, and not just your resources, but your time. It's a lot of time. So number one, it's got to start with the athlete. Does the athlete want to do that? Do they understand what that means? I think starting the conversation about college when you start it is very important as well. And I'm dealing with, and you and Nate, both of us are coaching 7th and 8th grade girls, and I've had parents in that world already telling me that they want to play in college, and it's like, pump the brakes a little bit here. Like, you're not even in high school yet. Yeah, it's okay to want that, but as soon as you start planting those seeds with the kids, they lose sight of why they're out there in the beginning. Back to the point of having fun. It has to be fun. They have to enjoy it. And as soon as it becomes more business-like, it's like we're working towards a scholarship, I think you can lose some of that fun. And then you start losing that fun at the early ages. By the time they get to the end of high school, they don't have anything left. So back to the beginning, want the player to want it first. And then you want to be very realistic about the level that your player can get to. And there's a lot of different levels. College sports, there's a tremendous amount of opportunity out there. I think it's usually harder for the parents to accept the level maybe than the players. I think a lot of times the players kind of understand it, and you can give them comparisons maybe in the environment that they're in. Hey, that girl that you played against from that team, she's going to that school. Oh, well, that girl's very good. That makes sense. So you can show it to them. Mom and dad might struggle with that a little bit more. You hear all the time, my kid's going to play D1. Well, okay, that'd be great, right? And it's very good, and I hope they get there, but there's so many other levels for it, and there's so much more out of that experience than just playing soccer. You're going to college to learn how to manage your schedule as a student athlete, get an education, learn how to be social with people away from home. Like, there's so much more that goes into playing college than just being a college athlete and getting a scholarship. So um, the parents need to be around their kid to kind of understand what that player wants, and wait for the right time for that to happen. For me, it's like, as you're going into high school, you have a pretty good idea of the athleticism of that player, their drive to play at a higher level, and you start to read the cues. Let them lead the conversation. And when the time is right, probably early high school, if you're a good player, you start to think about those different things. Hey, do you want to play outside of high school? And tell them what that means. But again, you have to be careful not taking away the fun. They have to enjoy it, even if they're all the way, playing through high school and into college. And then in some examples, it's already there. My daughter at Arkansas, at very early age, she was uber competitive. Like, you could tell there was something special about the way she competed. Now, she had a mom and dad who played college sports at Point Loma Nazarene. Her mom was very successful, first team All-American volleyball player. Her mom's a coach. I'm a coach. She has an older sister who played sports. So she grew up all around that. Mom and dad coaching, her sister playing, and she wanted to be as good as everyone else. And her version of fun was competing and winning. And that's what she wanted to do. And that happened at an early age. I think what was great about her is early days of her playing club soccer and club volleyball. You show up from work, or it's time to go to practice. She was ready to go every single time. Like, her bag is packed, her water's ready. She's sitting in the parking lot or sitting in the driveway. Mom, let's go. Dad, let's go. I want to get to practice. And she had that from early on, which is pretty neat. And I think that was number one. She enjoyed it because she was good. Like going back to giving them opportunities to be successful. They enjoy it when they're good at something.
Right.
And so she kind of led that her whole way through. And as a result, she got a chance to play on some high level teams, got a lot of exposure, and we kind of let her manage that process all the way through, which was really fun to learn and be a part of. I think if you're a coach or you're a liaison, like myself here, and you're leading the players rather than your own child, again, it goes back to the same kind of ideas. Do they want it? Is it something they want to do? Do they understand what it takes to get there? And then you map out the process for them. And there's a lot, like we talked about at the beginning of this, there's a lot of different layers that go to it. The academic side is very important. That's where I always start with the players. Where are you with your grades? How are you doing in school? And yes, having a high GPA helps. But it's also an indicator of someone's discipline. It's an indicator of how motivated they are in the academic environment, because when you get to college, you got to be able to balance both. And if a player comes to me, oh, I've got a 4 point something, okay, all right. So this person's got discipline, they've got structure, they've got good balance in what they're doing. This could be a player who can play in college. So that's a good starting point. And then when you get to meeting the player, and as they get a little bit older and going through high school, going back to finding the right level for them. And there's a lot of different ways to do that. I recommend that the players who want to play at that level start watching college volleyball or college soccer as early as they can, and watch the different levels on TV, through social media, Division I, Division II, Division III. It's all there. It's a great resource for these athletes now. All that stuff is there if they want to go get it and start watching it and have a realistic opinion of what you're saying. Oh, this team is really good. These girls are fast. They play really good. Okay. Or you're watching maybe a game where you're like, I could fit in with this group. I could play like this. And being realistic and letting the player again lead that process. And then once you kind of get that groove, then you show them what it takes to get there. You show them you got to cast a big net. You really, really do, especially with as many players where we are in Southern California and across the country. You've got coaches that I think at the club level that are improving all the time, which is resulting in players that are improving all the time. And it's a very competitive environment. So you need to show them how big their net needs to be for what they're trying to achieve, and then give them the pathway to do it. Show them what the emails look like, show them what the communication looks like, the follow-up, back to discipline. It's a lot of discipline. It's a lot of structure. There's a routine that you need to follow to get through that process. And as the college liaison, I'm just here as a resource for the players. This is how your initial email looks. This is how you follow up, and kind of let them manage it, so that they own it at the end of the day. So it's a fun experience. You want the kids to enjoy it. Mom and dad need to be someone that can help them, but not take the total control over it. I think the players really need to be the ones leading that, but mom and dad need to be there when they need a little bit of help. And I think when you start talking to your athlete about the process, I think you want to kind of just let them lead those conversations, and just ask them, hey, how are things going? Do you need any help from me? What can I do to help? What are some things that you're enjoying about the process? Where do you think things are a little bit more difficult? And again, let them think through what they're doing. They'll own it. And then you can be a parent and kind of guide them as you want to through it. So a lot of different layers to it. I do think that there's a ton of opportunity for players if they're willing to put the work in to do it. I tell the players all the time, the number one rule in recruiting is to recruit yourself. If you want it bad enough, you got to put in the work, and find the right level for you and the right experience for you. And as a coach, as a liaison, we can help them achieve those goals.
Fantastic. And you mentioned in that answer quite a bit about educating the parents about the different levels and the different expectations they should have. And earlier on, you talked about wanting to send the players back to the car after a training session with big smiles and full of joy, and kind of merging those two thoughts together. In addition to training youth athletes, we are also training youth sports parents. And one of the big issues that pretty much every kid will mention is the car ride home. And car ride home from games being like just an unpleasant experience. So, what are some ways that you try to educate your own youth sports parents in terms of not making that part of sports, a negative for the players, and maybe a few other tips that you have for other coaches out there about educating their parents about making the car ride home a positive experience, making their sideline behavior something that is positive for the referees and the other teams, and those other expectations that you set at the beginning of every year.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. It's very, very important. It really, really is. The parents need to enjoy the experience. If they don't, it's going to be very hard for the kid to enjoy it. Especially at the younger ages, the kids, they lean into the parents' emotions. They feel how the parents feel. They feel at a younger age, like if mom and dad feel this way, then I should probably feel that way too.
Mhm.
So how you interact with the players is extremely important. I talk about in every preseason meeting how important that car ride is to practice, away from practice, to match day, away from match day. You want to be as positive as you possibly can with your athlete and show them that you're enjoying what they're going through as much as they are. And and I think what's important, and I'm guilty of this too, like they get done with a match, they get in the car, and it's so easy for a parent to say, "Oh my gosh, why did coach do that? Why is that player playing?" And I've been there. I've done that myself as a parent, and it's not good because what I've learned is the athlete, your kid or the player, they might not even be thinking that. They might not even have noticed the coach did that. They're focused on something completely different, and now you've sent them in a direction that they weren't even aware of. So what's the point of that? So it's being very positive, and I think what's important in those car rides is to listen. Like let the kids talk. Um, what did you enjoy? What was fun at practice today? What was your favorite part? Um, ask about a friend that's within in the team. Ask questions that get them kind of thinking positive thoughts. Or sometimes just sit back and listen. Like let them talk. Let them lead the conversation. Don't feel like you have to get in there and ask and interview them when they get back in the car. It's not an interview. It's your kid, right? And you should just have conversations with them. And sometimes if you just kind of sit tight, they'll just start talking. Oh, hey, we did this exercise today, this shooting game. It's so much fun. Like, and my team won and it was great. And you haven't said anything. And you've let the player lead it. And then you just lean into that. Just let them go and then show them that it excites you as much as it excites them. Now, when they're on their way home, by the time they get home, they're happy. They've enjoyed what's going on. Mom and dad are happy. And then so that's the car ride home. And the car ride there is very important as well. And I mentioned it earlier. I come from work. You come from work. They come from school. We all meet together. A lot happens during the day. Same with mom and dad. They're
Mhm.
working all day. They get up early so they can go to work. They get off work as quickly as they can to get their kids to practice. A lot of the athletes that we work with have a bit of a commute to get to practice, and that's stressful on the parents. I get it. I've been there before. And it's very easy for the parents to kind of bring that stress into the car before the players get to practice. And I just encourage the parents to just say, take a step back. Like, yeah, you might have had a long day. You might have had to get up super early and leave work early to get here, but understand that car ride and how you interact with your player, with your child is very important. Ask them how their day went at school. Ask them to give some positive thoughts about different things. I would sometimes, with my daughter who was uber competitive, some of the things I would ask, like, what were your favorite three things today about school? Get three things, get them thinking about those different things, and maybe something different than sports. And hey, I had really fun at recess, or I learned something really cool in science class. Like get them thinking about those things and starting that conversation. And you can see it as a coach. When a player arrives in your environment and they're in a good mood, they're happy, like we talked about, they have joy. A lot of that comes from that car ride. And if mom and dad are having a fun car ride, they're having a fun car ride, they show up and things are good. You can hit the floor running with those kids, and you can also see those kids that show up that are a little bit stressed out. And maybe mom and dad have 3 or 4 kids to drop off, and they pull up to practice. They barely even stop their car, just open the door and jump out. And they got to take another kid to practice. That's stressful on the kids. And in the moment, as parents, sometimes we don't see it because we're just so busy in the routine. We got to get her. We got to get there. We got to get there. And I think what's important that I learned as a parent watching both of my daughters go through sports is just kind of take a step back. Like these are kids enjoying their experience, and this experience that they have, it goes by quicker than you think. So
Mhm.
you want them to enjoy it. You want to enjoy it. Like this is so awesome to watch your kid play club sports, to watch them play in high school. If they go on to play in college, I mean, there's no greater joy. There isn't. Watching your kid compete, whether they're successful or trying to be or whatever it is, just watching your kid be brave, like we talked about before, get on a court and try to perform or on a soccer field, it's just great. So I think sometimes as parents, just sit back a little bit, enjoy the experience, have some fun with it, and let the kids know that you are. And it'll help. It'll help. Those car rides are so important. I talk about it at the beginning of the year, every year. I reinforce it throughout the year with the parents. And again, we just get caught up in our routines and we all get busy. So we fall into these habits where everything's such a rush, and just enjoy it. If you enjoy it, the kids will enjoy it. And that's why we're doing it. We want the kids to
Mhm.
have a good experience.
No, I mean that's probably the very, very best possible way to wrap things up here. Enjoy it, because that really is the key to sustainability with this process. And we've talked a lot about positivity and creating joy and being able to create leadership principles and being able to create value. And one of the hardest things through the club and travel sport environment is burnout for players, burnout for coaches, and the longevity side of it is usually the biggest struggle. And the key takeaways from this conversation are how you get past those burnout issues and how you create a sustainable way of continuing on through sports. And it is looking forward to showing up at the field every day. And if you have that, then you'll be able to carry forward. So, Coach Bob, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your insight, your expertise, and your positive vision for sports.
Awesome. Thank you, Nate. Thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks a bunch.
Alrighty. Bye.